One afternoon, after an art lesson, Gabriele asked me to show him my drawings. I was hesitant, but in the end I showed them to him. I didn't know it yet, but that was a turning point for me. Every day, those walls seemed to close in tighter around me, like an invisible prison. My breathing grew heavier, my heart pounded louder, and the only escape I could imagine was to run far away from there. Now let me tell you more. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other stories like this. Enjoy. My story begins in Florence, in the heart of Tuscany, during the 90s. It was a period of great changes in Italy. Technology was starting to enter homes, and there was an air of renewal and modernity. But for a child like me, the world seemed much simpler and yet complex. I was in third grade at a school downtown, an old building with large classrooms and very tall windows that let in sunlight, brightening our school days. The classrooms were adorned with old maps, yellowed with age, and the smell of chalk hung thick in the air. The voices of the teachers echoed off the thick walls, blending with the rustling of notebook pages. Every sound seemed amplified, making me feel even smaller and more insignificant. Since I was little, I had difficulty reading and writing, and this made me different from other children. I was considered a troublemaker, a problem child. My classmates avoided me because I couldn't follow the lessons as well as they did, and the teachers didn't know how to handle me. Whenever I tried to read in class, the letters seemed to dance on the paper, and the words came out of my mouth in a jumble. Teachers thought I was lazy or rebellious and often punished me by sending me out of the classroom. The days when I had to face reading aloud were the worst. I felt the eyes of my classmates on me, their silent judgment that made me feel smaller and smaller. One day, after yet another crying fit in class, the teacher told me that I had to bring a signed excuse from my parents for the previous day's absence. I didn't have the courage to tell my parents the truth, so I asked my older brother to write it down for me. He agreed, promising me that it would be the last time. I showed the excuse to the teacher, who didn't suspect anything and pretended to believe that I had really been ill. My family had always been a bit distant. My father worked as an engineer and spent many hours in the office, while my mother was a very busy housewife. Instead, my big brother, Davide, was my only confidant. He was the one who covered for me when I got into trouble, like that time I ran away from school and wandered the streets of Florence, getting lost in its narrow alleys. One day, my father found out that I had falsified the excuse. He didn't raise his voice, but his disappointed look made me feel worse than any punishment. Worried, he decided to accompany me to school to talk to my teachers and the principal. My father then made a devastating decision for me without thinking twice. If you like the story, would you be kind enough to leave a like and subscribe to the channel? Thanks for your support. I was going to be transferred to a boarding school far from home. That night, I couldn't sleep. I was afraid of losing my family, of being forgotten. I tossed and turned in bed until I fell asleep exhausted, with tears streaming down my face. On the day of the transfer, my mother hugged me tightly and promised to visit me often. but I knew that promises sometimes cannot be kept. The boarding school was a cold and impersonal place. The days passed slowly and boringly. Every attempt to integrate me failed miserably. The teachers did not understand my problem and continued to treat me like a lazy and listless child. In the meantime, I sank deeper and deeper into my loneliness and sadness. The only moment of relief was when I drew. I took refuge in my sketches, creating imaginary worlds where everything was possible. One morning, a new teacher came to school. His name was Gabriele, and he looked different from the others. He came into the classroom dressed as a clown, making all of us children laugh. He brought with him an air of joy and lightheartedness that I had never seen before. He made us dance, sing, and above all, he taught us to love art. He immediately noticed my difficulties and began to dedicate extra time to me, helping me to understand letters and words. One afternoon, after an art class, Gabriele asked me to show him my drawings. I was hesitant, but finally I showed them to him. He was impressed by my creativity and encouraged me to continue drawing. He told me that I wasn't lazy, but that I had a specific difficulty, dyslexia, and that with the right help, I could overcome it. He spoke to my parents and convinced them to give me a second chance. They, initially skeptical, began to see my progress and to believe in me. Gabriele's support was fundamental. He organized an exhibition at school to display my work and that of my classmates. That day, I saw my parents' faces light up with pride as they looked at my drawings. It was a turning point. Little by little, I began to believe in myself and my abilities. My parents supported me more and more, and over time, we managed to overcome the difficulties together. He taught me not only to read and write, but also to never give up. Thanks to him, I discovered that each of us has a hidden talent, and that, with the right support, we can achieve great goals. Today, I am a successful illustrator. My drawings are appreciated everywhere, and I have found my place in the world. The road has been long and winding, but now I can say I made it. And all thanks to a teacher who believed in me and a family who never stopped loving me.